Okay, I'm going to say something that might surprise some people and actually might piss some people off. And, it's a little bit controversial, I suppose. I don't think it is, but I'm sure some people do. And basically, it's this. Games are too long. Yeah, I think games are too long. We have these endless side missions, the rinse and repeat, 50 hours plus of drudgery and levelling up that used to be the sole preserve of the MMORPG, which I used to avoid like the plague, and a friend of mine used to come round periodically and try and get me into them, and I used to respond with, I don't really want to be hitting a gopher over the head with a stick for 50 hours just to level up. But this seems to have creeped into gaming more generally now, and with open world gaming, it just seems to become, more prevalent as the years go on. Last year, I have to say, my favourite games were not at all open world games. I find open world games quite tedious, as you've probably guessed by now. And my favourite games last year were probably Quantum Break, Uncharted 4, Gears of War 4, Inside. Go and have a look at my games of the year and you'll see what I mean. Quantum Break was a flawed game, but it was an underrated game in my view. Uncharted 4 was absolutely brilliant, a bit slow at the beginning, but absolutely superb game, narrative driven. And, they offered basically quality over quantity. And if you look at something like The Last of Us, it's a masterclass in game design and story. And there is virtually no padding. A few years ago, I taught a creative writing class, and one of the points I always tried to stress was that every word should count. Every word should drive the narrative forward. If something seemed to be going nowhere, no matter how well it was written, it should be cut. You had to be ruthless. And there's a term for this, and it's used in slightly different situation, but it applies here, I think, and it's called murdering your darlings. Something might look great, but if it doesn't fit with the story, get rid of it. But if you look at games, we seem to be going in the opposite direction to this. For the most part, they've become the gaming equivalent of the airport novel. An overlong, padded mess which takes so much time to get where you're going that you've forgotten about it by the time you get there. It's lazy, it's sloppy, and it's about as much fun as sitting in front of a mirror watching your hair fall out. But why have we got to this stage where, certain publishers seem to put out endless copies of the same game with a different skin, where you have all these side missions that don't actually seem to serve any purpose? Is it because of artistic considerations? Well, in some cases, the answer is probably yes. And we do get games that fit into this model, into the open world model, that stand out. I'm thinking on GTA, I'm thinking of The Witcher 3 and games like that, which do stand out. And they're, beacons of this genre, if you like. But in most cases, it seems to be more to do with the business of making games. Linear has become all but a dirty word in gaming. And the idea of starting at the beginning and working through to a satisfactory and empowering ending, well, it's out of favour, isn't it? But as I say, why? Is it artistic or is it business? Could it be that open world games with endless rinse and repeat missions generate more revenue than straightforward narrative driven games with comprehensive and comprehensible stories? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Could it be that games as a service are also more lucrative than those outmoded games where we got the entire game when we paid for it? Is that outmoded? Well, I think it is, but did we ask for it to be outmoded? I'm pretty certain we didn't. Could it be that none of these decisions are made for artistic reasons, but instead they're all about the bottom line? And could there even be a cynical attempt to encourage gamers to invest more heavily in their games, both in terms of time and money, by creating a model that encourages more engagement by appealing to the addictive aspects of our natures? I've already talked about this a little bit in one of my previous videos some time ago, that games seem to be encouraging us to become more and more addicted to them. And I find that quite disturbing. It's odd to me that many modern games appear to have more in common with slot machines than they do with the games of the past. If you want to stay competitive, you have to engage with microtransactions as a gamer. If you want to be able to play at all, you have to buy DLC or even season passes if you're playing online games, because you don't want to be kicked from a server because you don't have the latest maps. And bloody hell, you don't want everybody else having an advantage because they bought the season pass and therefore got the maps a week earlier than you. Do ya? These all encourage engagement. They all encourage addiction. But don't be under any illusions. This is deliberately designed to encourage longer hours of play. And the more you play, the more you can be encouraged to buy even more DLC. A lot of people like these games, and that's fine. You know, they can invest hours and hours, weeks and weeks, months and months, and sometimes even decades into one game. But a model that encourages addictive behaviour is not healthy for the gamer. And it also discourages creative game design. So it's not healthy for the industry either, not in the long term, I don't think, anyway. There's room for all sorts of games, all kinds of games, but the idea that linear games are inherently inferior is patent nonsense. In fact, I'd suggest that as a general rule, linear games are often much more interesting and engaging, certainly from a story point of view, because like with the airport novel, if you pad something to the point where the narrative gets buried, then you're left with nothing but a pile of padding. And while it may be comfortable, it certainly isn't very stimulating. The Last of Us and games like it are becoming the exception, but only a Philistine would suggest that the vast majority of open world games offer a superior experience. And okay, people are going to say, oh, they're great, you know, I really enjoy them. And yes, I know people enjoy them. But is it an enjoyment because you're engaging with the characters or you're engaging with the game? Or is it because you're engaging in addictive behaviour? Admittedly, games like The Last of Us are few and far between. But maybe they wouldn't be so rare if more companies were more interested in the artistic side of gaming and were a little less focused on the bottom line. And I know that's really difficult. There's an interview with Phil Spencer that I saw in The Guardian this morning, and I want to do a video about that. And in this, he talks about the cost of creating games. And I understand that companies need to try and make money. You know, it is a business at the end of the day, and it is important for them to be able to make money so they can reinvest that money into making more games. But when they're embracing a model that encourages addiction, as I said before, I don't think that's at all healthy. It's difficult to create and craft a great story. It takes work. Cutting and pasting yet another mission into a map, well, it doesn't, does it? It's lucrative to make these open world games with endless rinse and repeat missions, but it's lazy and ultimately, well, for me at least, it's boring. Give me a well-crafted game that lasts 10 hours or even 5 hours. 50 hours or more of doing the same thing is what I used to do when I was earning minimum wage. It's called work, and menial work at that. And if you're, in effect, working, because when you're constantly levelling up, constantly grinding, it's like work, but it's work that you're addicted to. You're doing it over and over and over again. You're repeating a behaviour. And as I've said several times already, I think it's unhealthy. But, you know, there is room for all these types of games. I just don't like the fact that we're seeing a prevalence of these games, of these open world games that just seem to encourage people to invest more and more time and more money. But, you know, I might be wrong. I probably am. What do you think? Come in the comments, let me know, and we'll have a discussion about it as usual. And in the meantime, you know what I'm going to do? I always do this after a video. I'm going to go and get myself a cup of tea. And then I'm going to go and have a sit down and watch a little bit of telly before I go and pick up my little boy. And I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.